Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, owner of Fearless Financial Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, Fearless Females. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks to Fearless Financial Advisors for sponsoring our podcast. So today we're talking with Kateri O'Grady, and I just want you to listen through to the part where she talks about how cool you are. Kateri had a couple of strokes, and she quit the corporate world and ended up coming into her own space and starting her own company. And she was putting her resume together to basically, sell herself, sell her services, sell her company. And she's like, oh, I did some really cool things. And she said, I challenge you, or she says, everyone should kind of write their resume and put it on, put it somewhere they can see it or read it or say it out loud to themselves or write it down because I didn't realize the cool things that I did. I didn't realize how amazing I was until I wrote it down and actually read it. And I think that is so important because we just go through life. And I actually find this with my fearless females. A lot of times I'll say, oh, would you be willing to be on my podcast? And they're like, oh, you don't want me. I didn't do anything cool. I'm not very exciting. I didn't do anything. And then you come to find out all of the things that they have done in their life. And so I just challenge you, listen to the episode, listen through to where she talks about looking at your value and what you've done and writing it down, and then do that. Take that challenge. Write down the cool things that you've done in your life and your career and put them somewhere where you read them regularly, like on the bathroom mirror, next to your computer, on your vision board, somewhere that you see them regularly because you are so awesome. And it really helps when you look at that daily and see, I have done some really cool things. And then keep adding to it. Ladies, we do amazing things. We are fearless. Let's get started with Kateri. Today we have Kateri O'Grady. She is a fractional COO and founder of Kateri O'Grady Consulting. I'm so excited that we get to chat with her today. I know Kateri, I've been working with her for just a little while, and she has got some really interesting ideas and a great story. So thank you so much for doing this for us, Kateri.
No, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So my very first question always is my favorite. I'm a reader. I love reading anything, everything. My stack is so big right now, I'd have to take probably a month off to read it all, but I keep going. What is your favorite book?
I don't think I have a favorite book. I love to read, and I've recently also gotten into listening to books because then I can actually have two books going at once. I think Let Them by Mel Robbins was a great listen because she also added in her own thoughts throughout the book. And I do think it not only helped me personally, but it helps me parent in a different way. So when they are upset about something, I try to kind of teach them about the let them and the let me pieces of it. And so I think that book more recently has really stood out to me.
Yeah, I read that, listened to her podcast, and I kind of had the same idea. It's like it maybe didn't help me. It's really hard to do the let them piece of things, but it did help me to kind of pass that on to other people in my life that are having that problem and be like, ooh, read this, think about it this way. Maybe, so I'm not good at it. I'm still practicing, but the rest of the people in my life are having a great time. So.
Yeah, no, I know I'm getting better at it. So sometimes I do the 100 times. Like I think at one part of it, she's like, just keep saying it, and then when you understand it, do the let me. And it's helped me. I mean, and it's definitely helped at least one of my daughters because when, she's like, well, they said this, or I said, well, let them say that. You can't control that, but what can you control? And really walking her through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish someone would have done that for me when I was younger, right? I wish we all knew that when we were younger.
Yeah, simple lesson, but really powerful. I agree. So I love that book. I second it. And I don't have to add it to my book list because I've already read it. So yay.
You're welcome for that.
So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get started? How did you get where you're at now? Like, what do you do? Like, talk to me just a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I have over 20 years of operations experience. I've worked in the Big Four. I've worked in smaller firms. And ever since I was younger, if someone would have asked me what I wanted to do, it was always, I want to help people. And how I really got to be on my own as a fractional COO is I had multiple strokes about 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years this August. Mm-hmm. And I was paralyzed on my left side. I lost my speech. I was in the ICU for about a week. I had an incredible recovery. I probably should have been in bed for about a month. I made them let me try walking 3 days in since I could move my leg. And I shuffled my way around the ICU. And I got out of there about it was probably about a week later. And that probably should have been my wake-up call, but it wasn't. I went back to work to help with an acquisition. And I was just suffering health-wise every day from the day I went back. And didn't tell anyone, not even my husband. And I just wanted to, go back to the way things were. And I think it took me a while, but I realized the way things weren't supposed, it will never be that way again. And after I kind of finished the projects that I was working on and got into everything to a good state, I did resign and decided I'm just going to take this break. And I do look back and I think my strokes was the way of my body and the universe telling me, you're not doing what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. And just stop. Literally paralyzed me. And a company called and said, hey, I was told to call you, from a prior company, someone referred me, and that you could help my business. And it was a small local business. And I loved it because the impact that you have into a small to mid-sized business is just so much more than working for a larger corporation. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just the impact on the bottom line of a business, it was the impact on the people. And that is really my passion. So then I fell into fractional COO with all of my operations experience, but also specializing in the integration of the people and process from mergers and acquisitions. And I'll say like human capital management and resource management is also another specialty of mine.
Yeah, that's so cool. So did you go to school for this? Like, what did you go to school for?
Accounting. So, and a little story with the accounting is I swore I would never be an accounting major. And really is because, my father was an accountant and he pushed it on me so hard that I'm like, no way. I was that like rebellious child of I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. And then I fell in love with my accounting classes. So
oh, that's funny. That is the one thing. I love finance with all my heart and soul and hate the accounting courses. So I love that you love those.
Yeah, I loved them. And which is crazy because most people would never. And so it was a great stepping stone into operations because I understand the finance side. Mm-hmm. And that's very unique in operations. I think, you have to be explained, but I have experience in HR. I've worked with legal, business development, the breadth and depth of those different areas.
And so you liked working in the big company, but after your strokes, you're like, oh, the little to mid-sized companies are the ones that I can actually make a difference in. Like I see the impact.
Yes. And it's not that you don't have the impact in larger. I think you just have a greater impact in the smaller mid-size. And it's really with the people. That is where I see the impact. And that's the part I love because you're affecting someone's life and their work versus just the bottom line, or you're just making something more efficient. And I took over a process at one of my companies and had no experience in that area. And I had someone tell me he did not want to report to me. He did not feel that was fair. And I agreed with him because I didn't have any of that experience. And I said, but let's do this together. And he was working such late hours because there was just no process and he couldn't, the whole entire team just could not get out from underneath it. And in 6 months, we got them out from underneath it, had it automated. And at the end of it, he came to me and thanked me. And he said, for the first time, I feel like I have a life.
Right.
And I'm valued. And I thought that that was the most important part.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I love. You know, it's like you fixed this business piece, but like you also helped him feel valued, that he has a life, hopefully will stay longer, and those type of things.
Yeah, I love that. That's operations is my passion as well. You know, that's how I grew up in finance, was making processes better, easier, more efficient, so that you could spend time doing things you wanted to do as an advisor and talking to people. And I love that idea of efficiency and growth. So let's talk just a second before we move on about this stroke. So you had 3 strokes. Five strokes. In how long?
In a matter of minutes, if not all at the same time. And they don't know why. I did have a heart procedure, so there was a hole in my heart that they had to close. That's how the clots got through, but they'll never know why I clotted. I was doing yoga and fell over. So it was, you know, people will think I'm nuts, but because of my recovery, I think I can say this, it was the greatest gift I've been given. I just took spring break with my kids. Every other vacation I've had, and this, nobody has made me, but I am that workaholic. I'm like, 1 minute, I just got to respond to this email. I'm just going to take this call. And I put my away message up. I skimmed my emails. Nothing urgent was coming through. And I'm like, they got my away message. My full attention was my kids. And they never once said, what are you doing on your phone? You know, it was the best vacation that I've ever taken with them. And I honestly know it's because I had my strokes that I feel like I need to take advantage of every moment.
Yeah, that it does. It kind of wakes you up and you're like, oh, but my question, Kateri, is why didn't it wake you up after the week-long recovery?
I know. So, I mean, and I could not, like when I say I was walking, I mean, we walk half a mile to our kids' school. And I think that took me like half an hour at least. And so it wasn't even though like my health, like I was just back to normal right away. Standing up was hard. Yeah. But I think I was in denial because I was such a workaholic. I you know, if I look back, I think I just didn't want to think, you know, the worst and that this could happen. And to be honest, the first time I really recognized what I went through was my old boss actually is very big at the American Heart Association, and she got me involved. And last year was the second year I attended this event that they have every April. It's Women of Impact. And I was a featured survivor. So it was just a poster and said featured survivor. I never viewed myself as a survivor before that day. And I had sent in the picture. I knew about it. And it hit me so hard. I asked to bring the poster home. And my husband's like, you know, why? I said, I can't explain it. I said, this is the first time I feel like I survived. And I think that really hit me in such a different way than anything else that I went through, because I felt like I was going through the motions and I just had to get better and stronger. Mainly, I wanted my kids to see that I was resilient and I was okay. But that hit me like, okay, this was something serious that I survived.
And is that the point that you decided maybe I need to take a step back, or was that after you've already taken a step back?
I had already taken a step back, and the reason being and the intent was to go back eventually.
Oh, really?
So, yes. So I did not resign with the intention of staying out of corporate America. I resigned with the intention of I was having, so we're 3 or 4 of the strokes occurred. Now I forget how many, was where migraine control is. And so from the day the next day, like I had this awful migraine and it never went away. And so I went back to work with that. And honestly, full disclosure, it took a doctor saying to me, do you want to die? You need to make a change. And so that is really what triggered it. It wasn't. And so instead I'm like getting on calls, smiling and saying, I'm fine, you know, didn't say anything to anyone except the doctors trying to I tried multiple medications. Nothing was working. And they said to me, all you're doing is trying to mask it because that's all that the medication will do. You're not healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when he said that to me is when I tried cutting back and only working 4 days a week. And that didn't work because, again, I'm a workaholic. And so I think seeing that poster and starting to work with that first client is really what triggered me.
Huh. That's so interesting. It's the stubbornness and like just determination. You can feel it out of you. You're like, yeah, I was quitting, but I wasn't intending to stay quit,
Yes, exactly. And I think, whether it was to go back with the same company or not, I really have always loved people I've worked with at every company. And so I think I just crave that one-on-one interaction also.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there is a sense of like I love what I do. Like if someone told me that I couldn't ever, do finance and be a financial planner and I just needed to like rest and walk slowly to the school, I'm not sure I'd survive that. I get where you're coming from, right?
Yeah. And I think when it's all of the sudden, it's nothing that builds up that I was able to adjust to.
Mm-hmm.
But now I look back and I'm like, I don't think I could ever go back into corporate America. I mean, maybe I will one day. I can't say never. But I think that having the time at home, I found a new balance that was good for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another piece, like when I look at the workforce and as women, and I don't know how you feel about this, but everybody has their own approach. And I think instead of trying to say, you need to set the example, I think the example is, we're all individual women and what our wants are could be different. So some women are okay not being promoted and just steady Eddie through their careers because of flexibility at home that they want. Others want to be promoted. I think it's just respecting and honoring what each woman wants in their career.
And in each stage of their career too. I find that, like you go through different times when I had young kids at home, I needed to be off. I wasn't climbing the corporate ladder. I needed to be off when they were off. And that was my main priority. Now that they're, all out of the house, I'm in a different stage, different priorities, different ways of life. And so I love that idea, Kateri, of like honoring where you are in your career, in your life, in your needs and wants, like who you are.
Yes. And it took me a long time to accept, I think, and I do know part of my stubbornness. So I put myself through college and so I think it was always that survival mode. And I've always wanted more for my kids. I'm like, if I step back, are they going to lose out? Right. Like I don't want them to go through. And I mean, that's what most parents go through. So that's not anything unusual, but I think I just had it ingrained in me so much. But now that being home with them more, you see the value of that for my kids. I'm not, I've always had help up until when I resigned. And that was, it takes a village, but that I see the value for my children right now.
Mm-hmm. So what about an investment you made in yourself through this career journey? Is there something that you've done that you're like, oh my gosh, I would not be successful today if I hadn't done that. I'm so glad I did.
Such a good question. I have to think about that one. I think it's taught me boundaries. And slowly I've learned them. So I was, allowing myself to be booked from 9 to 6 o'clock and just trying to network and grow. And I realized I'm burning myself out, just to get clients, and that's not going to be beneficial. Mm-hmm. So I think it really taught me how to balance. And I think that is an investment in myself because I never was very good at that. I'd always say to my kids, not now, right? If I'm on the phone or I'm on a call and 9 o'clock rolls around and they're in bed. So it's identifying that the now needs to come, whether it's for myself to work out, it's for them to do something with them. But that was a huge lesson and investment, which is you need to take those breaks to be more successful.
Mm-hmm. And how did you learn that? Did you take a class on it, or you just noticed that you needed to do it, or the strokes made you take that time off? How did you do that?
I think a mix of everything. I mean, I think I've always known it. I mean, I've always worked a lot, and not not anyone making me by choice. Mm-hmm. But I think I started down that path again and had to pull myself out of it. And that's what I realized.
Uh-huh. That's so interesting. I'm going to say that, knock on wood. I wish I would learn that lesson, but I also don't want to go through 5 strokes. So.
I know. And I have to remind myself sometimes, like, you don't want to go backwards, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What is the worst advice someone gave you? Can you ever remember getting any really bad advice? And like, did you take the advice? Did you not take it? Did you learn from it?
I mean, I can tell you what I thought was my most unfair advice, but I learned from it and still took it. It was my first year of work in audit. And back then we did not have electronic files like we do now. And we were we had to travel to Omaha for our client. And I mean, we were photocopying. I was photocopying. I was the most junior person, photocopying. Forgot one piece of paper and it got written up in my review. And by the way, they emailed us that one piece of paper. One piece. But when I tell you we shipped boxes and boxes of paper back, it was just, I got dinged on that one piece and said I needed to be more attention to detail. I was devastated. I thought how unfair it was. And I still think it wasn't fair in full disclosure.
Yeah.
But I took it to heart. Right. And I'm like, okay, so double check that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. Mm-hmm. And I think so I took that to heart for myself, but I also took it as a learning lesson to manage, which is people make mistakes and they don't need to be called out on every mistakes, right? Some of this are take advantage of learning moments and take advantage of what needs to be documented. So really to be more thoughtful as a manager versus, just calling everything out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that probably affects how you do things now too, when you talk about making a difference in people's lives. And that probably, you've seen so many different situations that now you know which things you need to call out and say, hey, we need to do a better job. There's not a whole lot of room for error here, but other things you can let it slide. And I mean, you say, hey, do better next time, but you can let it slide,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think, when you're putting something in writing, it hits harder. So, and not to have mentioned it prior, right? Of like, this was whatever it is. So I think that really resonated with me, and there's a way to communicate and have that open communication. And I actually, even with the teams that I've had underneath me, I'm like, tell me, give me feedback. I need to know how to be better for you. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always open to the feedback. I just believe there's ways to communicate it all.
Oh, that's so give me an example. I had, I always came at team growth from more like a positive point of view. I would always tell them all the things they're doing right. And then I'd ask them, so what do you think, where could you have done better? And they usually would give me where they needed to improve. But I never did. I was never good at helping dial down in on that improvement area in a nice way. So help all of us.
Yeah, so I kind of take the approach a lot of times I would do one-on-ones with my direct reports, and that would be weekly or every other week. And that was just, let's go through the to-dos, let's see the priorities, etc. But also sometimes I would say, hey, so-and-so reached out because, and, I know there's 2 sides to this. And I think that's the other thing is that I've learned through my career, through managing people too, is there's 3 sides to every story, right? At both sides and then the middle, which, because everyone has their own perspective. And I think it's just taking that approach, which isn't you were wrong. It's this is what happened in my eyes. Let's walk through it. How could we have done it? How could I have supported you? Right. Mm-hmm. So it's all on the individual, but where do I play that I could have helped you more on this? That is really kind of the approach I like to take, because especially if you're the manager, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. Yeah. So you have to kind of step up and say, if that mistake or that error, whatever, was made, that's on you. It's on the person who did it, but it's still on you as well. And I think the other piece I would say is always have your team's back, right? So we had an issue on one of my teams. Someone made a mistake. Partner was very upset and wanted a name. And because I knew the reaction, I said, the name's me, Kateri, right? You can take it out on me. It's my team. They made the mistake. I've already spoken to the person. It's not going to happen again. It's already been resolved. But it's me. Like, and I didn't, and I held my ground, and I would not give the name. And it was really, because I wanted my team to know, listen, you're human. You will make a mistake. Everybody does. Mm-hmm. And I've got your back. Right. And did I not, obviously I had the conversation with the individual of like, how did this happen? How do we prevent it going forward? Mm-hmm. Is this an easy mistake that others could have made and just haven't yet? And that actually answer was yes. So what is the process we need to put in place to avoid that going forward? Mm-hmm. So it's really, how do you respond instead of being reactive? How can you take that lesson and be proactive?
I love that. I love that idea. We used to do something similar where we would go through a situation. If we had a situation that just didn't work out well, and we're like, okay, what did we do well? That's the very first thing we asked, is what did we do well? And then, okay, what would we do differently if we could do it again? Is there a way we could do it differently? Could we have changed the situation in any way? But I like the idea that you said, like, what could I have done to better support you? Because ultimately it does come down. I've apologized for things that weren't my fault a million times because it is ultimately me, right?
Yes, agreed. And I think when you do that, whether others agree with you or not, your team feels it and you're retaining them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. I love you've got their back. I think that's the best thing ever. I do wish more people kind of followed that theory, like the I've got your back, and you can't get that name from me.
Yeah. I was not a fan favorite that day.
Yeah, it's rough to be in that position too. What about things that you would have done differently? Like, I'm not going to say regrets, but if you look back over your career, is there something that you're like, oh my gosh, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done that so much differently the second time around?
Yeah, I don't think I would have stayed as long in certain roles as I did. I do regret some of that. I regret not speaking up at times about things that I didn't necessarily agree with. Maybe I wouldn't go along with it, but I kind of also didn't voice my opinion. And I think and I think my number one regret is not knowing my value up until post-strokes, because I think it's so easy to let people tell you your value versus you recognize your value. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a regret that I would love to help others kind of just come out of that and say, I am good at what I do. Right. And you can get every review in the world. But for me, I was, always top rated, yet never felt I was doing well enough. Mm-hmm. And looking back, I'm like, wait, this is my resume? This is what I've accomplished? And
that's amazing. Oh my gosh.
I actually have done well. And I think getting there, right? Having that regret, always doubting myself and my success versus believing in myself is a regret I have.
So how would you have helped yourself to believe in yourself? Like, how do you do it now for others?
So, this is I think what helps me is meditation.
Okay.
Because, I actually was just telling my husband that he should try meditation, because it's taken me years and now I can actually start clearing my mind a bit more, and I'm doing better at it. And I think instead of feeling that stress, you have, even if it's 10 minutes of this downtime, you come out feeling a bit refreshed. And I think that's part of it. I think when I went out on my own and had to promote my past, my success and my careers that I've had at different companies, that's when I was like, wow, yes, I've done this. So it's almost like put it in writing or say it out loud what you've done, mm-hmm. and kind of give yourself a pat on the back. And so that is what I would tell someone, if they're feeling like, and then I think the other piece I would say is trust your gut. So I have taken on roles that I did not want, and in my gut, I knew I didn't want them, and they didn't go poorly, but I was not happy in them. And I knew going into them, I don't want to do this. So that's the other piece I would say is just trust your gut and write down your accomplishments, truly or speak them out loud, right? Look at your resume and then speak it out loud.
That's a really good idea. Maybe put it on your bathroom mirror. I look at all these cool things that I did, and write down your wins too. Yeah. So that you can go back and kind of look and say, hey, I feel like we're kindred spirits in that personality type, like, just like always wanting to do better. So I'll make a goal, I'll reach the goal, I'll completely forget I even reached the goal and make a new one to reach. And so I never really celebrate what I've done because I'm always reaching for something more. And if you wrote that down and put it somewhere that you could kind of look through how you've grown and what the cool things that you've done, right?
Yes. And I'll tell you, and I am very good at celebrating everybody else. So, I mean, from like personal stuff to professional, and love it. But never celebrate me. Mm-hmm. And so I just won a great engagement that I was very excited about. And I was like, I'm going to celebrate. My kids were home for spring break. And we went upstairs and did a dance, like, woo, I got it. And I've never done that before. And I just thought, it made me even more excited and more proud of myself that, I did it. And I think that whether it's a promotion, it doesn't have to be that you're out on your own. And it could be something small. And it doesn't even have to be professional. It could be that you ran the mile that you just did for the first time in God knows how many years or ever, right? give yourself the credit.
Yeah, I love that. We pop out like quotes and stuff for these episodes. And I'm going to tell my people to pop that out because I think that is so important to realize and celebrate yourself. I love that you said that, Kateri. Thank you. So what about if you could go back to your early self, young you, 20 years old, 21, just right out of school or just before you get out of school, like what would you tell that girl?
To have more fun. I've actually thought about this. Like, I wish I would have I was so worried. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I had to pay my student loans. I was so worried about not succeeding that I didn't enjoy that, like, post-life after college, or even college for that matter. And I think I would tell myself, have more fun. Like, things will work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, live in the present. Mm-hmm. Stop. I think younger people are a little bit better at that nowadays. At least my kids. My young daughter, after high school, went to Costa Rica to teach English to young kids in Costa Rica, and I'm the financial advisor in her world, and I'm like, yeah, if you spend a little bit too much, traveling during that time period, yeah, that's like what's going to happen. You're going to have to work an extra couple months or something like that in your lifetime. Like, do it.
Yeah, just enjoy it, right? And I know, and that's what I'm like and because I also see that some of my worry I've put into my kids at times, and you're just like, no, we're okay. You're okay. Like,
yeah. That is such a hard balance because you see it reflected in the kids too. When you say things that you're like, that's not true, but what I'm worried about nowadays. Yeah. I love that. Sometimes I feel like we're better people because we're trying to make our kids better, right?
Yes. Yeah. And because you think more about, or you reflect, right? So if you've said something, then you're like, oof, shouldn't have said that. I got to go talk to them.
Yeah. What scared you the most when you first started on your journey? And does it still scare you today?
Not being successful, and it doesn't scare me anymore. And I think because I was always afraid to take a chance, that I stayed doing, exactly what I was good at and never tried anything on my own. And so someone actually once said to me, you're afraid to fail. And that was feedback that I took to heart because he was right. And he's like, so you just try to perfect it all. Like, it's not that I slowed anything down. Everything kept moving. But as it moved along, I'm like, oh, we got to tweak this or we have to fix this, because I didn't want to be viewed ever as a failure. And, and in that way, you are failing, right? Because you're failing yourself for not recognizing those wins. And so when I went into this, I'm like, what if I don't succeed? This will be embarrassing, humiliating. Then I realized, how many people even try this, right? So I've already succeeded in that. I'm doing something that most people would never try. And it's not failure if it doesn't take off. It means it wasn't meant to be. Mm-hmm. And that really changed my mindset over the past few months as I've been taking off.
Yeah, I love that idea. And it is so hard too, staring down the barrel of like a bit of a perfectionist going, but what if I'm not perfect? But what if I don't do well? And I think also, Kateri, that there's some power in admitting that, hey, I might need some help here. Like I might not know what I'm doing in this particular instance.
Yes. Yeah. And asking for it. And that's also what I have to say I've learned through my career is always ask. Asking does not mean that you don't know something, because you don't. And you're not going to be viewed as someone who's not knowledgeable. You're going to be viewed as someone who wants to do well. And I feel like we should be taught that earlier in life, because I have a daughter who is very bright, and she has decided that she doesn't need help on anything, which drives me nuts. And then when you do try to help her, she tells you why you're wrong. And so finally I asked her teachers, of like, does she ask for help? They're like, no. And she needs to. I said, so you need to tell her, because I've been telling her this. But it's really getting kids to realize that ask for help is not saying you weren't good enough. It's saying that you want to be better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that idea. And I do think, again, watching what we want our kids to do, mistakes we see them making because we've made them, helps us to sometimes be like, if I expect somebody else to ask for help, if I expect a team member to ask for help, if I expect, them to ask for, I need to be willing to do that too. And and it is hard, because sometimes you do feel like, oh my gosh, they're going to think I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll call myself out, right? Just to make it a little lighter and say, listen, maybe I should know this, but I don't. And can you help me on this? And I've called, especially when you start a new company, I'll call someone like, can you help me with this? I don't know what, or can you tell me about this person? I have a meeting with them. And I would love to just get some insight before I meet with them, how to approach them, right? Everyone likes to be approached differently. Yeah. And it helps. And it also builds that relationship with whomever you're asking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is nothing I like so much in this world as when someone asks me a question about finance that I can talk about for 15 minutes. Like my clients will come in sometimes and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me, I don't mean to be a bother, but could you tell me about this? And my whole face lights up and I'm like, thank you. Yes.
I know, and the passion comes through, and they're just like, okay.
Yeah, they're like, okay, maybe I didn't need 30 minutes on why a Roth was a good idea. Maybe that's not what I was looking for.
When they see it, they're like, I can't cut her off. She's so excited.
I can tell she really likes this. Yeah, I know. So I do think, though, that just proves the point that people do want to help. They want to share their knowledge. They're not being stingy with it, or at least most of the people that I run into. And if they are like, oh, I'm not answering that question, you might do better than me or something like that, they're probably not your tribe. You should probably find a different people.
Agreed. I completely agree with you.
What about any unique challenges as you were kind of coming up through your career? Were there any unique challenges because you were a woman?
Yes. Definitely. There's been multiple times where I've been the only woman on a call in the room, that you're doubted first. I actually had a situation where there was a lead of a part of the business, and he was telling me that he sold the work. Well, he had a massive write-off, and it was only 1 month in, and he had completely overspent. It was a 3-month engagement. And he called someone in the C-suite, who then called him. And I was trying to explain to him, yes, you're bringing in X amount, but when you spend this amount, we now have a loss, not a profit. And he told me I was overhead and that I didn't know what I was talking about, that the client's still writing a check. And the person in C-suite immediately assumed the worst and called me and said, don't I understand how all of this works? And I said, yes, but he doesn't. And had to walk through it, but it was immediately believed that I did not know. Now, do I know if that was because I was a woman? I don't know, but it felt a little like that at the time. I also had a situation where I was at a dinner and an inappropriate question was asked of me. And every man turned their head. And it was a humiliating question that would only have been asked to a woman, that later was told to apologize, which means that somebody else heard, and nobody did anything about it. And it was a big victory dinner for us. And I was the only female there. So it really brought it down. I also have to say, like, I don't mean to, but I think we also have to know, when I say know our value, when I came back from both my maternity leaves, my comp, as it should have been, was prorated for that year. And I wasn't there the whole year, so I understood that. But the following years, no one ever went back and said, where is she to her peers? I was always the highest rated, and it never happened. And I think that as a woman, when we look at inequity in pay, that contributes to it. And yes, men have paternity leaves now and things like that, but we ever then go back in a year later, right, and say, okay, well, we did prorate her, but if I'm making it up, if Joe Smith is getting this at that rating and that level, we have to adjust her. It's not necessarily a comp increase, it's a comp adjustment. And I don't know that all companies do that. And that's also, I would say, a challenge just as a woman that I faced.
Yeah. That is, I always am kind of thinking of that, like, because women in general earn less than men. And part of the reason they do is because we have things like they can't have the babies. We have the babies. We have to
recover, by the way. We need to recover.
Yes. And so, like, if you don't ever look at that step, that adjustment, then through the years, that can get larger and larger.
And it gets larger, right? Because you do it on percents, right? So if you're not at a certain level, that percent is never valued as much. And so it's not, and I don't think it's intentional. I just don't think it's seen. And you don't think to ask, because, and at least for me, they're like, oh my gosh, you got X percent. This is the highest we could have given. And so you're just so excited. And then you look back, you're like, yeah, but was I ever adjusted back? And you realize you weren't. And there's nothing to do at that moment. But, I think it's just bringing awareness.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at least talking about it, at least admitting that there may be a problem, that there might be something that needs to be adjusted for. Yeah, I agree. Kateri, what is the thing you are most proud of? So
my kids, and I think, and I've told them before too, that I think that's my favorite job, is being a mom. Yeah. I have learned more from them, than my career, right? And it's funny because it's like you get what you get and you don't get upset. And sometimes you have to think about that at work. And I'm proud that I never gave up, on myself and kind of my dreams, because my kids are seeing me and I want them to believe in themselves, right? As versus again, like kind of doing it to work to earn money. Now I'm doing it because it's what I enjoy. And that's just a different, perspective to have. So I think learning really how to be a mom. And I guess the other piece is I judge less now. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm proud of myself for that. In that I think as humans, it's so easy to judge. And I think a lot of judgment comes from jealousy or envy of what you don't have or that you think you want. And I think after my strokes, you realize what you do have and the blessings that is, versus that person has a bigger house or they have a different career. Or if I would have taken that job, would I have been doing that much better? Whatever it is, you can just sit back and realize that life is good.
Yeah. Having that sense of gratitude for, like, I've lived my life well, and I can be proud of me and my daughters can be proud of me, right?
Yes. And I think I just want them to see a different world always than what we've had. And not that we've had it bad, but I believe that it can always be better.
Yeah. I love that. That's actually, with the Fearless Females and with the podcast, I'm hoping to inspire those young people to fix all the problems that we couldn't get around to fixing. So I have great hope for that next generation. I have daughters of my own.
To continue it.
Yeah. I'm like, they are fierce and fearless. And I absolutely believe they can they can make this world 10 times better than we did. And we probably, hopefully, make it 10 times better than those before us. And
Right.
And it keeps going down. So I love that. I love that. So any advice for a young woman who is kind of starting down this path that you're already so successful at to help her be successful like you?
Yeah, I think that there's always a push and a pull. So be mindful, right? Don't pick and choose your battles, because you can't always be the squeaky wheel. And I think sometimes people just feel like you're always supposed to be speaking up, right? And it's like you have to find your what and when you should be doing that and how, right? Sometimes it's in a meeting and sometimes it is not. And so really thinking about that, do something, whether it's work or personally, that you do have a passion at, to find that balance. And I think most importantly, what I was saying earlier, which is like, know your value and believe in yourself. Mm-hmm. I do want to add a caveat to that though. Know your value is truly what have you earned, not what do you want, right? You have to earn what you want. Because I had someone come to me once like, I feel like I should be making, and it was like an extraordinary amount of money. And I said, well, why? Right. And then it's just that's what I think, for my lifestyle. And I said, okay, but the company doesn't owe your lifestyle, right? And had to kind of coach them through, this is how I think you can get there. It might take 3 to 5 years, mm-hmm. right? And I think just being aware of what your goals are and how to reach them, not the entitlement piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But know where you want to go then, right? So know your value at the time and what you want it to be in however many years.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea because I do coach a lot to knowing your value and like understanding what you're worth and not, and fighting for that, but there is that piece of like, if I'm not worth this, what do I need to do to become?
Yes. Right. It's acknowledging both sides of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Well, Kateri, thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing your story. It was so interesting, and I just love chatting with you. So if I have a young lady who has questions or just wants to ask a few about your journey, how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. So my email is Kateri, Kateri, at KateriO'GradyConsulting.com. And I also have a website that they could look and schedule a meeting with me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kateri. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I loved this. Thank you so much.